Howdy YouTube folks, it's your YouTube neighborhood girl Ellen. That's what I've been going with. Presenting you with another video. And in this video I wanted to touch on two things, and I feel like they can kind of correlate. And one of them is knowing the difference between stubborn pride and pride in yourself, and knowing when to put pride in yourself and when to not be stubborn about things. Excuse me. I know, excuse me again. I know that for years, I have always had kind of a stubborn mentality. I never put enough pride in myself. And I feel like pride, when you put pride in yourself, it's like a law of attraction. You bring good things when you put good pride into yourself. But if you don't give yourself the right pride and you have the bad pride, sometimes you can lose things. And I feel like this also ties into what I'm going to say next in this video. And if anybody's dealing with this, maybe this can enlighten them. But I feel like there's a correlation to stubborn pride, and maybe you don't have a lot of friends. I feel like there's a correlation between the two, and I believe that when you manifest negative things in your life, you tend to just have a negative life, and you're always dwelling on a negative life. And I feel like that's where I'm at, because at this current time I don't really have a social circle. I'm an introvert. I have this woman that comes on Fridays that I hang out with and play board games and stuff. Mainly card games. But she's part of a corporation I'm a part of, that I'm a client for. So in the end of the day, I'm just her client. So I'm not really a friend. I'm more of a client. So there's that. And so that's how I know that we're not really like friends. And I'm not saying that meanly. It's not that we aren't sociable to each other and nice to each other. It's just that there's a business aspect to that. So if I ever leave that corporation, for whatever reason, because I get done with that corporation, at the end of the day, I'm just a client, so I'm going to be forgotten. Maybe, unless I'm a client that leaves an impact on them. But I try to be as nice to this person as possible. But anyways, yeah, so that's why I feel I don't have a big social circle, and I think it's due to negativity. And I believe the main thing I can say out of this is try not to bring negativeness to your life, because I feel like if you bring negative, you attract negative. And I'm really trying to work on that. I really do wish I had a social circle of friends. As I've mentioned, I had a relative. I believe I stated the relative's correlation to me, which was a cousin, who we were friends for a long time, but we had a falling out, which I felt I was very mistreated in that, and I thought that we were decent friends, but there were also things before that that were signs that I should have left that, and it wasn't a very healthy friendship. I feel this person was very bipolar, and it's possible that I might have a touch of it, and there might be things that I've dealt with because I've had mental issues and I've seen myself in a worst, and maybe that's part of it. I don't 100% know that to be true. I'm not saying that 100% to be true, and I'm also not saying that they were bipolar, but I felt like they kind of were, and that they were diagnosed with that. I know they would tell me that they had been diagnosed with ADHD, and I believe that could be a possible side effect with ADHD. So there were signs early on in that was a bad friendship, and I shouldn't have been a part of it. And I can go into more detail of, if I really wanted to, how I felt that friendship impacted other parts of my life and kind of made me one way, but I won't do that. I've also have another relative that I feel as well that's been in my life that has, like, as I mentioned, sociopathic tendencies, I believe, which could possibly tie into being bipolar and maybe a little ADHD. But again, I won't get into that. But That's kind of the only friend I've really ever had. I feel like I've had other friends in my life, but I tried keeping them, but I just felt like we fell apart because possibly things I did that made that happen. And so I think that's what I can say in this video, is that you should just really reflect on your life and make a positive of it, because if you're not a positive person, I believe you'll always make bad. Because at a job I was working at, I had kind of befriended two people, and I thought it would be cool having them as friends. But I think there may have been instances in my life that may have spilled over on them that they were sick of, and that's probably not what they wanted out of the friendship. So it just ended up, we drifted apart. And I had a lot of friends in high school, but we just haven't really contacted with each other much in recent years. They are friends of mine on Facebook, but I don't physically go to see them, and they still live in the same state that I live in, just in different parts, obviously. But yeah, I just feel like all my life I guess the main thing I can say, in what I think the main topic of this video is negativity, and how you probably should not bring negative forefronts into your life. Because if you do bring negative forefronts into your life, I feel like you just never have anything good if you stay in that. And that's why I've been trying to work on good. So if there's anything I can tell people, is try to work on good. And I do believe maybe someday I will have friends in my life, because I've tried to make friendships and they don't always work out, and I get it. If the other person isn't into the friendship, I totally respect that. I give them their space, I back off. I say what I need to in order to see if the friendship would happen, but if the person doesn't want it, I respect that. But I have tried, admittably, in recent, and just to no avail. But I totally understand that and respect it. It's just, when you're in a negative space like me, I can tell you from advice standpoint, and not really having a social circle or a way to go to a social circle, or maybe you think somebody's really cool and you want to be friends with them, but they live distances farther from you, where they realize it might not work out and you don't, but you're so down that you wish you had somebody, because as of recent you really wish you could live some sort of normalcy, or your version of normalcy, as I made the video. Don't let yourself get there. I've been dealing with that, and as of recent, still looking for work, as I said, trying to get a living for myself. I don't really have my own place. I live in a rural area. I don't really get out of the house much anymore, unless I have to go to like the store. Not that I don't keep myself healthy and move around the house, obviously, but excuse me, but I admittedly have become a shut-in, and I don't think that's something you should do. Granted, it's winter where I am. I'm sure for majority of the world it's winter time, but you know, you might live in, say, Florida or something in the United States, where it's more tropic and less cold. Yeah, so that's basically what I can say is, don't let yourself get to that point. Don't let life just be a constant thing for you, and just be grateful for what you do have, family, whatever, and just try to put positive things in your life, and maybe along will come more positive things, but you just kind of have to build it. And that's also what I'm still working on, as I've stated in other videos, is trying to build positivity in my life. And I feel that I'm just still working on it, but I'm trying to get there. I feel there's times where I just feel like, why am I in this life and what am I doing? And I feel like sometimes I just really just exist, and that's not healthy. Do not get into that mindset. Work on it, because if you feel like you just exist and you're not you as a human, that's not a very healthy way to look at life. And I think that's where you should really reevaluate yourself and know exactly what you want. I've also stated on this channel before of things I wouldn't mind doing, like possibly ending up in Hollywood or LA, because I believe LA and Hollywood are the same thing. Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, I'm I know a little bit about geographical, but I'm not like an expert. I've always said that that would be something I could entertain, I should say. Not necessarily that I want to as a music career, but I've also said I don't know if I would do that because of how good I have it here, and that's my fear, is if I just leave, I'm going to mess up what I have and may not be able to get back to it because I'll have no money and nothing to my name. And I don't want to be like that, where I leave with nothing to try to make something to end up with nothing, like a lot of people have tried. And a prime example of this was a YouTuber that I was watching one time, and the guy has probably long since passed away, but this YouTuber was older, and I'm not talking about the YouTuber, I'm talking about the guy that he interviewed when he was younger, and this was like in the 60s, and the guy is going to Nashville. It was like 1963, and this YouTuber was younger, and it was a video he made, and he posted it of this guy. And I say the guy's passed away. He was younger too, but I would guess that the guy could have passed away. And anyways, I won't say the guy's name, but he really wanted to be a country musician at the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville, and he had pretty good music, and he had driven all the way up there in his Volkswagen Beetle. And obviously his wife and family approved of this, because that was his life. That was always the guy's life dream, to be a musician on the stage for the Grand Ole Opry. And he came from like some farm town, and I think he even worked on his parents' farm with his wife and lived in a house nearby. And he, in his spare time, he had been working on his music, is what it seemed like from when the guy's interviewing him. That's what it sounds like he was doing at that time. But he doesn't end up that time getting there, because you know how it is like they have a certain set and standard to musicians, and he ends up packaging up and going on his way back home, is what I gather from all of that. And see, that's my thing, is like, for me, I wouldn't want to just uproot and have that kind of scenario happen to me, no matter where I ended up. But I've always wanted something different, and in recent years, two of the people that I tried to make friends with, that kind of just fell out from my job, as I was mentioning. One of them actually used to be a transient. I will not mention names again. That's what they told me. That was their life. And I very much fell like kind of a little bit of romanticization over that. Like it was a cool idea to be that, but in a life like that, you really have nothing, so why would I do that? But there's always been an aspect of me who's wanted something different. And I can also say, if you're somebody who's always wanted something different out of life, maybe you should just reach for that different and go to that different place. But I quite honestly don't know where I would end up, because I'm also a person who's afraid that if I leave what I have and just do what I would want to do and go to different areas, that I would not end up settling down and I would just be a drifter all my life. Because I've always felt like that's how my mind has always worked, is that I'm an introvert and I'm a drifter, and I could just, if given the opportunity, I could just go from place to place. As I believe I've mentioned in a YouTube video, that when I was younger, I would walk the tracks and always fantasize about bumping into a group of homeless people and joining them and becoming homeless, which is not something I would recommend doing, just because I felt like it. And I was probably 15 at the time, still in high school. My family and me were living in an apartment complex. Um, and I feel like, obviously my brothers were out of the house, but it was me and my mom and dad. And I feel like I could have been a young runaway at that time, but thankfully I never ran away. As a kid, I always used to pretend and play like I was going to run away and do my own thing someday and just escape in the field across the way from a house we were renting when I was really young, and just walk and never come back. And that my family would never might miss me, but they would never know where I was ever again. But I also do believe I would have eventually been found, and I would have been caught, and they would have had to bring me back by authorities, and I didn't want to live a life like that. So that's why I'm saying, when you put yourself in a negative area, and I believe that was a negative headspace of my life that I've always had, don't do that, and don't get into that space, and don't think like that, because I feel like, and I don't have any experience in this because I've never been a drifter, but I feel like if you could speak to somebody who was a drifter all their life and just went from place to place and never settled down, and say you had a conversation in like a restaurant with somebody you met randomly just because you felt they needed someone to talk to, or at a bar, you struck up a conversation, a place where you would do that, I feel like one thing they might tell you is, don't do this life, because it's not a life that would be enjoyable, and live it. And I guess that's why it's probably better that I've never done that. But quite honestly, that's the way I've always felt. And I also feel like that is a negative space that you shouldn't get into, because I feel like that's where I've always wanted to run away from who I am and just escape who I am. And I feel by drifting around, I can escape who I truly am, so I don't have to deal with it. And that's not very healthy. So anything I can stress to you YouTube folks is, don't try to run away from yourself. Don't be anything you're not. And don't live like that. I've had a lot of in recent years, I've had a lot of time to reflect on why I am the way I am, and I just have never really been able to figure myself out ever. And it's kind of sad, because I feel like with me, I could be a person who ends up just going through the life having nothing, and of for say anything that can really be tangible to hold on to forever. Because yes, I have a lot of items, yes, I have family, but everyone has to pass on at some point. And what happens if I'm the last one left and I don't have that much left? What do I have after that, which would be next to nothing? I'm essentially just existing and not knowing, and I'm always worried that that's how I'm going to end up in life, is just always not knowing what I want, and not knowing where I want to go and how I want to be. I know who I am as an authentic self, obviously, but I don't know where my goals are truly headed. I see things I would want to do in my life, but then again, I don't know if there's something I could live up to the expectations of those goals. So that's something to just also keep in mind, is don't ever self-doubt yourself. If you feel really impacted to do something, just do it. I feel like life is too short, and you can't let your negative doubts and self-loathing and anything stand in the way of where you need to go. I also don't feel like if it came to a music career in the music industry, that I would be able to hold up as good to the standard of what they need, and I feel like I would just be rejected because I've because I've messed around a little bit and wrote like solos on my piano of my own. Well, performed them, I should say, not wrote them down physically. But I do know how they go on, and I could be wrong, and these could already have been made. But a lot of them, I feel like, just came out of my own creativeness, and nobody's ever created that sound of piano music before. But I obviously will never share it with the world, and don't plan on to, because I feel like if I went into a music career and say I tried to do piano or something, because I've been getting really good at it, that I would probably not be good enough for their modern piano needs. Even though I've tried to create more modern based songs, because that's really what I've been into lately, is just trying to live for more for the modern and less for the old. Even though I have a more of like an old soul, I've always been told, and that's true. I really like old music and stuff. I've been trying to live more in a modern way, combined with my old, so that way I could still have my aspect of old, but have keep myself at the forefront and be present with things, so I'm not shielded from the modern day, because I feel like that's something everybody should try to do, is not shield themselves from the modern day, because I feel like you get stuck in a pigeonhole and you just don't you anytime you hold a conversation with somebody, if they bring up some current music artist or some current event, you you look like you're naive and I don't know if I don't know how to say it, but it makes, to me at least, I feel like sometimes in the past when I was like that, it made me feel like I looked like I was naive and just didn't know any better about anything, when in fact I probably know more than I've ever portrayed. I've also noticed, and maybe some of you, hold on a minute, excuse me, have this mentality too, where I've always been able through life to kind of like play down how smart I am about certain things. So if there was somebody I felt that wanted to connect with me again, and really only wanted to connect with me so they could get my advice and help on an item like that, I could play down like I didn't know it as well as they heard that I did, so they wouldn't bother me ever again over that. And I believe that if you're a person like me that has that kind of does that kind of thing, is in a way it can be useful, but just be careful with that, because I feel like it also, see, for me the thing was, in certain aspects, because of different careers I've done in my life, um, I felt like when people wanted that, that's all they were looking to connect with me for, was for my technical advice and help on that. They didn't really want to hang out or be that true friend that just wanted to hang out because we haven't seen each other in a long time. They physically wanted me to be there for them and help them when they needed me, but when they didn't need me, they didn't bother to reach out. And granted, this person was an older person and has since passed on, sadly, and I thought this person was decent, but they had their moments. Um, for one person that was kind of like that, and then I think there were other little incidences, obviously with the distanced cousin. So yeah, in some ways it can be helpful, but just know that there might be times where you could help somebody out and they'll never forget that. So don't always hold yourself into that, because sometimes when you play like you don't know any better in certain aspects, even though it's okay to make mistakes and stuff like that, but know the difference. Um, uh, you people might perceive you as maybe not knowing as much as you do, and that's why you should never do that, because people might think, oh well, maybe you know less than what it seemed you may have known in the beginning, when you may know more than you play on. You know what I'm saying? So just keep that in mind as well, and don't let those traits show out on you. And I've also noticed too, and another trait that I'll touch on a little bit in this video, because I just feel like touching on multiple things is, and I feel like it's a learned trait I picked up from relatives, or a relative that I've kind of used in my life, but it can be a very healthy trait. And this relative did it in a nice way. You know, they didn't mean any harm by what they were doing. It's just is, but being slightly manipulative. I feel like I have adopted a little bit of that, and I do believe at times mine can probably be a little benign, but at the same token, I feel like I've used it in situations where I didn't want to tell someone how I truly felt, so I kept my mouth shut instead of telling them like it was where it should have been told, by using the manipulation to make them feel better. And that's not good. But at the same token, I'm sure there were times where I used my manipulation to make me feel better. So at the same token, that's not good either, because I'm using that to my advantage to get my point across and demeaning the other person's point. So I highly recommend, if you feel like you might have that, to work on that and just not do that, because that's also not a healthier trait. And having to reflect back on my life and times that I've done that, I just don't feel right about that. And I feel like there were probably times, I'm sure, if I really thought hard, where I did it to my own benefit and it wasn't fair to the other person that I was doing it on. And that's not cool. So, yeah. I just feel like that's another aspect of, to touch on with the negativity stuff. And just getting yourself out of negative. I'm just sitting here right now and felt that I needed to make this slightly longer video about that, because I feel like I've just been in a negative space and kind of just feel like I'm living to exist, and that's not healthy, because just living to exist is not a healthy thing, but it's just kind of, I guess, who I am as a person. I've always just gone on existing and just doing what I do, and making leaps of faith in, as I want to classify them as, into things, and just not thinking all the time and just doing, I want to do this, so I'm going to do it, but then not realizing that this can be the outcome of it, and here you are now. So yeah, please, if anyone's out there in a negative space and maybe deals with some of these kind of things, maybe has some of these kind of traits, please really evaluate yourself and just know that, and I'm going to turn this light on because it's getting kind of dark in here. Just know that life gets better, and that you should not live like that, because if you do, it's just going to bring you nothing but sorrow. And in recent years, I've noticed that within bringing myself a little bit of this sorrow, and obviously from missing loved ones at the same token too. Sorry, I gotta blow my nose again. And I'm gonna get a drink of water. I know this video's been going on quite long. That I've been more emotionally sad inside, and that's not healthy. And maybe YouTube is not the best platform for me to voice this in the best way I would, but I feel like getting this video out and kind of talking about the real and the raw side of myself is the way it should be, because when I first started this YouTube channel, I kind of started it doing things I wasn't really interested in as a hobby, but I kind of did it to make myself happy. And I found that when I was down and out, at those times and I was really like down about things, I found like impulsively getting small engine equipment and garden tractors would give me like some sort of like sick high in a way. And not because I was happy about doing it, but like give me a rush of like, oh, I found this, or oh, I got that. And it would keep my mind off it for a little while, but then later in the day, I would just end up going back to a sorrow filled point of that. And also, through a lot of that, what you didn't see, and I would have never talked about it because I'm not a person who's proud of this or would boast about something, but I feel I can say it here. I was dealing with some alcoholism. I had an alcohol problem throughout my life in different things, as I've mentioned before, I believe on a video. Not proud of it, but I was dealing with that. And so a lot of times when I'd come home from work, I would have beers waiting for me. So there were times when I wasn't making YouTube videos at all because I was busy getting drunk and passing out to go to sleep to wake up the next day to go to work feeling slightly like garbage. And just living a kind of hard life. And I also recommend nobody do that because that is not a healthy life. So that's why I say at that point in time there really wasn't any happiness there. It was just me trying to thrive and exist. And I'm still trying to find me and as a personality and where I stand, and still really trying to learn about myself. So the one thing I can say to all you YouTube folks is just really sit down and get rid of the negative, soul search, and really try to find yourself as soon as you can so you can better where you're at, because I feel like I've never always bettered where I'm at, and that's a problem I have. But see, I need to work on that because I feel like if I can get myself to where things are going to get better and state that to myself more, because I find sometimes I go from a happy point of state to an all of a sudden dip into a sorrow-filled state that I will get myself eventually to a point where I need to be and know what I need to do and have it there. So just keep that in mind, YouTube folks, and please, I highly recommend that you get yourself there. And again, as I've stated before, a therapist to me has really helped me. Some people are different, but I highly recommend therapy. As always, YouTube folks, have an excellent time. Whatever it is. She ate already. Whatever it is, wherever you are, keep your heads up, stay strong, all that kind of jazz. Yeah. And as always, sunshine, unicorns, and rainbows. And I think that's where I'm going to leave this video off, because I think I've said enough, and it's already almost 34 minutes long. And I could just keep going on and on about this, but I just feel like that's where it needs to end. And as always, if you wouldn't mind liking, commenting, and subscribing, that would be awesome. But you don't have to, and you know the drill. So I will see you in my next video, YouTubers, and I hope you get some sort of helpfulness out of me being the real and the raw and just talking about how I feel and where I'm at. And with that, I will be signing off.